4 people from the entourage of US President Donald Trump held secret talks in Kiev with some of the main political opponents of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Politico reports, citing 3 Ukrainian MPs and an American foreign policy expert. According to the publication's sources, senior Trump associates held talks with opposition leader Yulia Tymoshenko and senior members of Petro Poroshenko's party to discuss whether Ukraine can quickly hold presidential elections, which have been postponed due to martial law still in effect in Ukraine. Politico reminds us that the official position of the US administration is that Trump does not interfere in the internal politics of Ukraine. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick denied his boss was weighing into Ukrainian politics, adding all that Trump wants is a partner for peace. But the behavior of Trump and his officials suggest quite the opposite. Trump has accused Zelensky of being a dictator without elections, while Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has falsely accused Kiev of cancelling the election. The publication writes that the key to all the plans being discussed through unofficial channels is holding presidential elections in Ukraine after an agreement on a temporary ceasefire is reached, but before full-scale peace talks begin. The newspaper notes that Trump aides are confident that Zelensky will lose all votes due to conflict fatigue and public frustration over corruption. His poll ratings have been declining for years, though they have risen since last week's Oval Office scandal. But while the Trump camp may hope an election will sink Zelensky, he is still massively more popular than Tymoshenko or Poroshenko. In a poll conducted by British pollster Survation this week after the blow-up at the White House, 44% said they would back Zelensky for the presidency. His nearest rival, trailing him by more than 20 percentage points, is Valery Zaluzny, a former army commander who is now Ukraine's ambassador to Britain. Only 10% backed Poroshenko, who is known as the Chocolate King due to his confectionery empire. Tymoshenko garnered just 5.7% support. The key to all the plans under discussion via back channels is to hold presidential elections after a temporary ceasefire is agreed, but before full-scale peace negotiations get underway in earnest. The idea of an early presidential election is also being pushed by the Kremlin, which has wanted to be rid of Zelensky for years. Both Tymoshenko and Poroshenko have publicly opposed holding elections before the fighting ends, as has Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko. Nonetheless, Poroshenko's people and Yulia, they're all talking to Trump world, positioning themselves as people who would be easier to work with and people who would consent to many of the things that Zelensky is not agreeing to, a top Republican foreign policy expert told Politico, asking that his name be withheld so he could speak freely.
Ukrainian armed forces have struck Russian military installations in the occupied territories of Kherson and Donetsk regions with cluster munitions using HIMARS rocket launcher system and killing a large number of Russian servicemen. On March 4, as a result of the joint operation by the Tavria Operational Strategic Grouping of the Ukrainian Armed Forces and the fighters of the 14th Separate Regiment, a Russian military training ground was intercepted and targeted in the occupied territory of Kherson region. The training ground, identified by drone operators, was struck with cluster munitions with the use of the HIMARS rocket launcher system. As a result, at least 30 Russian military personnel at the training ground were killed. A vehicle in the area was also destroyed. On March 5, an area with Russian military personnel and military equipment was struck in the direction of the city of Pokrovsk in eastern Donetsk region. The occupiers and a tank in the area were destroyed by the cluster munitions.
After 3 years of the Great War, Russia is forced to fight with guns produced during Stalin's time. Ukraine is equipped with Western artillery, which is distinguished by its long range and accuracy of strikes. Russian military instructor and Z-War correspondent Svyatoslav Golikov spoke about this. He stated that at this stage, Ukraine is superior to Russia in artillery. This is the result of a 3-year big war, which dictator Vladimir Putin began under the slogan of demilitarization of the neighboring country. I would like to make a special note of the enemy's artillery, the accuracy of the hit. Alas, Western systems outdo ours. The advantage in range again belongs to Western models, unfortunately. The D-20, D-30 systems we have, and all sorts of strange things from the 40s, do not have enough range to reach the enemy's artillery, said the Z-War correspondent. It should be noted that today Ukraine has a significant artillery arsenal, which includes both domestic and allied systems. It is armed with Ukrainian Bogdana howitzers, more than 80 HIMARS and M270 multiple launch rocket systems, hundreds of guns, including American M777. Recently, the Insider independent media outlet reported that Russia has depleted much of its Soviet-era military-industrial stockpile, with remaining equipment in poor condition. The Russian military has lost more than half of its available equipment, and unless an unexpected shift occurs, hostilities could gradually fade by late 2025 or early 2026 due to a shortage of tanks, armored vehicles and artillery, the publication claims. The Insider reported that both Russian and Ukrainian forces are primarily losing Soviet-era equipment, with Russian losses now accounting for about 50% of its total stock. Much of the remaining equipment in storage is in poor technical condition, making it unlikely to be repaired and deployed to the front lines. The number of combat-ready vehicles Russia could still send to the front is estimated at around 2,000 tanks, 2,000 infantry fighting vehicles, and 3,000 armored personnel carriers. Moscow is also reportedly facing production limitations. The only infantry fighting vehicle in large-scale production remains the BMP-3, with 463 units produced in 2023. Modern BTR-82 armored personnel carrier production is estimated at 300 to 400 units annually. The decline in Russia's equipment stockpile coincides with a slowdown in assault operations in Ukraine, though fighting remains intense, according to the monitoring group Deep State.